Good evening and welcome to tonight's Cedar Falls Municipal Candidate Forum. My name is Katie Orlando. It's my honor tonight to be the moderator. I'm the CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Northeast Iowa. Joining us tonight, we have a great field of candidates. City Council candidates include candidates Cruz, Runchi, Dara, Miller, Saul, Green, and Cornelius. We'll get a chance to hear more from them in a minute. We also have mayoral candidates Brown and Skane with us as well. The order of the evening will be as follows. Each candidate will receive 2 minutes to do a brief intro and opening statements. Followed by that, I have a few questions to ask the candidates, where they'll also each get 2 minutes to respond. The audience with us tonight, thank you for joining us, has all had the opportunity to submit questions for the candidates this evening. And so we'll take the remainder of the 2 hours left to answer those. And at the end, each candidate will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. So without further ado, we'll turn it to the candidates to have them begin their opening statements. We have a timekeeper with us tonight. Yellow means 20 seconds left, and red means you're out of time. So we'll try to respect that as much as possible. So let's go ahead and we'll start to my right, and we'll just work our way down. So how does that sound, everyone? We ready? We're good? All right, so candidate Cruz, why don't you go ahead and start with your opening statement. You have 2 minutes.
Hello, everybody. I'm Darryl Cruz, Cedar Falls candidate for Ward 3. A little bit about my background. I grew up in Northeast Iowa on a hog and dairy farm. Developed some good hard-working skills through that. Graduate of Turkey Valley High School. I then came down to Hawkeye Community College and did a tool and die program. Worked in that for a few years. Then following that, I attended University of Northern Iowa, got my degree in finance and economics, then became employed as a financial planner, now called Ameriprise Financial. Been with them for 31 years, developed many analytical skills for that position, and very frugal person, very detail-oriented, and I look forward to your vote for Ward 3. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, candidate. Candidate Runchi, your opening statement.
My name is John Runchi. I'm running for Cedar Falls City Council, 3rd Ward, which is in the western part of the city. I'm seeking another term because I believe the city of Cedar Falls is moving in the right direction, and I want to continue the work to help it grow. I'm a graduate of the University of Northern Iowa, married to my wife Mick for 48 years, and the father of 4 grown children, all of whom were educated in the Cedar Falls School District. I was the owner of a construction supply business. I sold that business in 2008 and have been retired since then. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum, and that's really all I've got to say.
Great, thank you, and thank you for joining us tonight. Candidate Dara, your opening remarks.
Thank you, and thanks to the League and for all of you coming out on a cool fall evening to be here in person. My name is Frank Dara, and I'm running for 5th Ward City Council. A little about myself. I moved to Cedar Falls in 1975, thinking I was passing through, and fell in love with the community. Been involved with the city for a long time. 10 years I was on the Park and Rec Commission. For 12 years where I learned a lot. I was on planning and zoning, and I'm just now finishing my 12th year on the City Council. And I thank Cedar Falls for letting some average guy who is not a politician to be that engaged in a community like this. The last couple of years I've had the honor of being on the executive board of the Iowa League of Cities, and the League, being with that group, has just reinforced what I've known about Cedar Falls all along. We are the envy of many communities in this state. Our high quality of life, the trail system and Community Main Street and the university and all the other amenities that we have in our community. The second lowest tax rate among the 25 largest cities in the state, and increasing private investment in our community just make me extremely proud to live here and to work for you on the council. I'm running again because I look at the quality of life that we have and realize it doesn't just happen. We are where we are now because of good planning by people many years ago, years before us, and I think that type of planning and foresight continues to need to be applied at the City Council level.
Great, thank you so much, and thank you for joining us tonight. Candidate Brown, your opening remarks.
Thank you, Katie, and thanks to the League of Women Voters for putting this forum on, and thanks to our top-notch Channel 15 crew. Denny and his folks just do a great job putting this sort of forum together. My name is Jim Brown. I've been mayor of this great city for the last 2 years. I came to Cedar Falls in 1989, finished my degree in 91. Shortly thereafter, I met my now wife. She is a career teacher and now teaches in the Cedar Falls School District. We have 2 teenage daughters that also attend schools in the Cedar Falls School District. A couple years ago, I ran, well, before I became mayor, I served 6 years on the Board of Education, worked with some wonderful people there in all the activities that that group does to make Cedar Falls one of the best school districts in the state. And 2 years ago, I ran on my background, which is business development, for the economic development of Cedar Falls. Also in terms of, I believe I've been able to foster that kind of growth, working alongside great people within the city, the different partnerships throughout the Cedar Valley. And I want to continue that in terms of fostering that kind of growth that we have. Also different kind of communication and leadership skills. I didn't know that leadership would be as tested as it was almost a year ago, maybe last weekend with another 500-year flood, but again, working with great people, we worked our way through that, and I think out of that. And then hopefully now with the work been able to do with, again, good staff with our federal level folks, congressmen and senators, to get that levee fixed finally, so we don't have to worry as much, at least this side of the river, for any further flooding. Other ways I've been able to foster, I think, the communication is just using the tools that we have here at the city, whether it's a Mayor's Corner, whether it's on Channel 15 or in the Currents magazines. I think it's just important to keep the citizens involved of what's coming for the city and what has happened with the city. And I hope to foster that to continue the next 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Skane, your opening remarks.
Yes, I'm so pleased to be here tonight as part of the League of Women Voters Forum. My association with the League goes back to before Rosemary and I came to Cedar Falls. One of the first things Rosemary did when we moved to Cedar Falls was to contact Diane Brandt and Jane Tiford to become active in the League here. Rosemary was Voter Service Chair and served a term as president during those early years. I enjoyed working with her on her League projects. I am pleased tonight that tonight's forum enables us to respond to questions from the audience, because I have found that lately those in City Hall have not listened often to what the people have to say. In fact, they have made it increasingly difficult to engage in meaningful discussion on matters before the council. Cedar Falls has had problems over the years, but the problems were faced with community input, and good solutions were found in most cases. Since 2014, problems have emerged that have not been resolved for the benefit of the people. All too often, the people do not even know that the decision has been made. I'm running for mayor because I believe that the elected mayor can be a better advocate for the people than the unelected officials who currently determine policy and determine how our tax money is spent. I will be interested in what the people here tonight have to say. It is good to be here tonight.
Great, thank you so much for joining us and for those remarks. Candidate Miller, your opening remarks.
I'd like to say thanks to the League and everyone in the crowd here this evening, and as well to each of the newcoming candidates. 4 years ago when I ran for the council, it was a grueling process, so I feel the pain there. So thanks to each of you guys for stepping up. Again, I'm Mark Miller. I've been honored to serve as your Ward 1 City Council person, and I look forward to the opportunity to serve in this role again. Just a little bit about me on my personal life. I'm a small business owner. My wife Jenna is out here in the crowd, and we have 3 children at home, one of which has graduated from Cedar Falls and 2 are still in the system. You probably won't hear it said often, but I am very thankful for the controversial issues that we've had to face in the last 4 years. Some people have first terms that are status quo, if you will. I don't feel like mine was anything of the sort. From University Avenue to the rental ordinance to staffing levels to the flood of 2016 to reorganization here at City Hall, each of which brought a number of different variables that we had to weigh, and I'm very thankful to have those under my belt, if you will, to guide me through another term. Each, they're very controversial, and it's our role as council people to listen to the public and take those different ideas, different opinions, and try and form an opinion that we think best moves the city forward. It's not an easy task, but one that I thoroughly enjoy. Again, I can't say enough about that. It really has been I think if you ask my wife, the amount of hours I spend at home racking my brain trying to figure out the right way to go about things, it's an honor to be in this role. I'm running again because many of the issues that I set out to accomplish still remain, from northern Cedar Falls development to concerns downtown with parking and whatnot. I look forward to the opportunity to continue serving, and I look forward to the future that we have in Cedar Falls.
Great, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Candidate Saul, your opening remarks.
First, let me say thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this. I know many of you, and to all of you that have come out tonight. I'm Leanne Saul, and I'm running for City Council at Large. I was born and raised here in Cedar Falls, married to Cedar Falls fireman's kid, Greg Saul. I have 4 married children, 15 grandchildren. Someone asked me today what my first job was. It was driving to another farm at 4:30 in the morning, feeding 150 veal calves, going home and showering, going to school, and at 4:30 in the afternoon, I was back at that farm feeding those 150 veal calves. For that hard work, I got a little bit of the profit. That taught me hard work. So, and then I went to work right out of high school for my dad's manufacturing company, started in inventory, purchasing, accounting, and then to sales and marketing, which is my first love. And then I met my husband. Well, actually, then I worked, I managed the West Side Made Right in Cedar Falls. Some of you remember that, down on Park Avenue. Worked for a law firm, Clark, Butler, and Walsh in Waterloo, and then married Greg. And he was an insurance agent, decided to start his own agency. So in 1983, we started Professional Insurance Planners. Some of you know it as PIPAC. And we've been in business together for all of those years. Married for 39, worked together 24/7. That tells you a little bit about us. Anyway, 44 years of business and leadership experience has taught me that listening to others is key to good decision making. I promise to listen to the people of Cedar Falls, but leadership goes one step further, and that is not only to listen, but consider and not ignore their input. It has become apparent to me in visiting with citizens of Cedar Falls as I've been door knocking that they believe their input is not being considered. I have also witnessed some city council persons voting based on their personal opinions, which is not indicative of a representative government. A growing city needs visionary and inspirational leaders. That's why I believe that Cedar Falls should support a full-time mayor. A mayor is an ambassador to potential developers, investors, and employers. A mayor leads the way to most effectively maximize our city's assets as river, trails, industrial park, our vibrant downtown. And most of all, are innovative and visionary people.
Candidate, I'm going to actually have to ask you to pause just because you exceeded your 2 minutes, but I'm sure you'll have a chance to finish that in a bit. Candidate Green, your opening remarks.
Good evening. My name is Rob Green. My family's Cedar Falls story is very similar to some of yours. I came to Cedar Falls in 2004 with my Waterloo native wife to create a home and a life for ourselves, and soon after for our children. Prior to that, I'd graduated from the U.S. Coast Guard Academy in New London, Connecticut. Go Bears! And then was a commissioned officer up in Alaska and Washington, D.C. When I had time to daydream on patrol in the Bering Sea, I dreamt of the life I have now. Like many of you, I wanted to be part of a community that truly felt like home, a place I could invest in as a business owner, a responsible citizen, a community leader, and as a husband and father. In the past 13 years, I've been grateful for the chance to volunteer, lead, learn, worship, mentor, and connect with inspiring community leaders and thinkers. I'm a full-time web developer at UNI and have a master's in instructional technology from there. And through the GI Bill, I'm doing a second master's in library and information science. And I've imagined the Cedar Falls that I hope to leave my children and their children. Each of tonight's candidates has the opportunity to present a vision for what Cedar Falls could and should look like, not just in terms of infrastructure and business development and the other things, but also in our vision for what we want our community's character to be in the years ahead. I believe our city council members play a critical role in shaping that character, in how we address our differences, accommodate diverse needs and perspectives, and especially in how we resist the prejudices and divisiveness that have already become so prevalent at the state and national level. I was the first to announce my candidacy for city council at large back in March, because I honestly believe that I have the temperament, judgment, integrity, and experience to be an effective and dynamic representative for the people of Cedar Falls. I hope my beliefs resonate with you tonight and that you'll find in my character what you hope to see in the character of Cedar Falls in the years ahead.
Thank you, Candidate Green. And Candidate Cornelius, your opening remarks.
Hi. Thank you for being here tonight, and thanks to all the viewers at home. Thanks to the League of Women Voters and all the other sponsors that have made this event possible. I am Erin Cornelius, and I am running to be your next City Councilwoman. I live in North Cedar with my husband, Brian, and our 3-year-old son, Aiden. I moved to Cedar Falls to get my master's degree from UNI, and like Frank, I fell in love with the community and want to stay. I am passionate about our city, where we are and where we're going in the future. I believe the role of the City Council is to listen to you, its citizens, to listen to experts, and to listen to those directly impacted by the decisions we make. I know that we need to responsibly manage our growth, and that includes attracting businesses that will provide quality jobs that will encourage all of our children to stay in the Cedar Valley. I know that we need to do something about our fire department. We need to fully fund and fully staff to ensure the safety of all of our neighborhoods. I know that a lot of divisive issues have come before the City Council, and we need to try to find compromises to those issues. I know that we need to address the issue of parking, both here in downtown and on the Hill. I know that it has been an issue. Downtown access for bikes and pedestrians has been an issue for a long time, and there is no more perfect time to address this issue than when we're reconstructing Main Street. I know we need to make decisions that benefit all neighborhoods, and I know this is not a job I can do alone. I need the input of the citizens, and I need the input of experts. I know that I will be a balanced and effective advocate for all residents of Cedar Falls.
Thank you, candidate, and thank you all for your opening remarks. We are going to now move on to 2 questions that I have prepared for the candidates. The first one is, what is the biggest challenge facing Cedar Falls, and what should your role be to solve it? For this question, we'll actually start in the reverse and work our way back down, so I'll have candidate Cornelius begin. So you have 2 minutes for your response.
Okay. If you would have asked me this question when I first decided to run, I would have said the hit our budget is going to take when the state backfill money is not available in 2018 as promised. I might have said that taking every neighborhood into consideration when making decisions was our biggest issue. These are both big issues. However, in talking with experts, citizens, and firefighters, I have found that the biggest issue that our city is facing is our fire services. We need to build our fire department with fully trained firefighters. We need to ensure the best possible fire safety for all neighborhoods. Cross-training is great, but public safety officers do not take the place of fully trained firefighters and should not be used as an excuse for cutting our fire department staff. The city of Cedar Falls has grown exponentially and our fire staff has not. In fact, it has been cut in the last 20 years. This is not acceptable. My role in addressing this issue will be pushing the discussion as a city council member to advocate a return to a fully staffed fire department with fully trained firefighters. This issue has been brought up innumerable times by citizens, including firefighters and other community members, but it's yet to be appropriately addressed. As a council member, I will ask that city officials look into increasing the number of fully trained firefighters on permanent staff and will fight for a stronger fire department so every neighborhood feels protected.
Great, thank you, candidate Cornelius. Candidate Green, what is the biggest challenge facing Cedar Falls and what should your role be to solve it?
I could talk about a number of issues that concern me, like the proposed public safety building and the fire rescue coverage, which I've written extensively about, or the sprawl that's affecting the outer reaches of our city. But I'm going to spotlight a major challenge that encompasses so many others. One of our biggest long-term challenges is our increasingly segmented and fractured society. It's true in Cedar Falls and in the rest of America too. Because of social media and other social structures, we have the ability like never before to isolate ourselves around people who think and look and act like us. Or we can retreat into our homes and our devices and disengage from those around us entirely. There's no question that Americans are experiencing increased loneliness, isolation, and depression because of these societal forces. During my police ride-alongs and from studying our police logs, I've been shocked at the skyrocketing number of suicide attempts here in Cedar Falls over the past 15 years. Isolation and alienation is one cause, and we need to deal with it as a community. I believe that neighborhoods and the sense of belonging that neighborhood relationships provide are a key piece of the puzzle to address this challenge. That's why I believe the City of Cedar Falls should identify and pursue neighborhood development as a city priority, not to add to the city's budget, but simply to strategically and thoughtfully invest in the infrastructure and amenities, public parks, walkable bikes and streets, and public spaces like the library that have the best chance of bringing residents together. I also believe we should establish a neighborhood services committee made up of the leaders of the neighborhood associations to share ideas and best practices, to weigh in on budget decisions that affect neighborhoods, and to apply for and distribute grant money for worthy neighborhood projects. Other cities nationwide, including Waterloo, are doing these kinds of activities and doing them well. Cedar Falls should not just be an adopter of neighborhood development, but be a national model of neighborhood engagement and vitality. When it comes down to it, I feel that focusing greater effort on neighborhood development means we stand a better chance of addressing our other challenges too.
Great, thank you, Candidate Green. Candidate Saul, your response, same question.
I believe that the biggest challenge facing Cedar Falls is to be able to continue to provide quality services and the quality of life while staying within a budget that does not increase our taxes. Due to the visionary planning of our leaders, we have become accustomed to good, reliable city services and increased quality of life amenities. The source of funding continues to be a challenge with increased costs, regulatory requirements, and state property tax legislation. Cedar Falls has one of the lowest property tax rates of the top 25 cities in the state, and our city leaders have worked hard to manage the budget and not ask for an increase. Our budgeted revenues and expenses of $92 million requires disciplined leadership to manage. My role will be to consider the views of the people of Cedar Falls and work with the fellow city councilpersons and staff to make wise decisions about the future of Cedar Falls with the goal of holding down the taxes.
Great, thank you for your response. Candidate Miller, what is the biggest challenge facing Cedar Falls and what should your role be to help solve it?
I think our budget is our biggest challenge, and it's every year, it doesn't go away. Almost every decision that happens in the community comes back to the budget in one way or another. Whether from my perspective as a ward councilman versus an at-large councilman, the needs of my ward concern me, obviously, but as well, I've tried to be an advocate for the community as a whole. It isn't just North Cedar or downtown. We need to consider the other wards and the rest of our community as part of that budget as well. So while I advocate for my ward, I think it's our job as council people to look at that budget and take the recommendations of staff and find the best solution going forward, knowing that there's variables with state mandates and potential loss of revenue for the city, and how are we going to do that every year and still make quality of life a positive thing in Cedar Falls.
Thank you. Candidate Skane, same question.
Yeah, the biggest challenge that we have is that Cedar Falls is faced with services that are increasingly unsafe and unreliable. They've already been mentioned in terms of fire and police. But one of the biggest challenges that we have is how can we spend our tax money effectively. University Avenue is a fiasco. It was poorly designed. It was now has roundabouts that don't even fit the road surface that they had to do it. I've studied roundabouts, and I've never come across one that you had to have a S-curve to get into. The real problem with our city is that people are diverting the tax money to other projects. And when we look at it from that perspective, there's much we can do. And as has been indicated, we need a council that is more responsible. Obviously, as we have operated for years as a mayor-council, the one who can do the most in terms of these kinds of things is the mayor. And as it mayor, I intend to be an advocate for the people, and I intend to meet those challenges.
Thank you for that response. Candidate Brown, what is the biggest challenge facing Cedar Falls, and what should your role be to help solve it?
Thanks, Katie. Actually, I think one of the biggest challenges we have for the upcoming probably 4 to 6 years is somewhat of a good challenge. And what I mean by that is Cedar Falls has grown so well the last couple of decades. One area that's been lacking, I believe, it's its infrastructure, its roads and its streets. And we've got to catch up with that. University Avenue is one example. As that project is finishing its completion, we need to also move on to Main Street. Council is now in deliberations. It's been quite a few deliberations, as a matter of fact, towards the design of Main Street, and that decision is to be made here relatively soon. But then the reality is next year we have to tear that road up and replace that road. We also have First Street. Many folks don't realize that is the most heavily trafficked vehicle traffic road within our city. And once again, with the partnership with the state of Iowa, we've got to fix that road from roughly Main Street or downtown up through to Hudson Road. And the granddaddy of them all is Highway 58 and Viking Road. Again, a partnership with the DOT, and all this is good once it's done. But I think in the midst of that, the role of the mayor, I at least conveyed a little bit of that, I think, about a year ago during the first phase of University Avenue, going door to door and making sure those business owners realized the city was available. There was a website, there's email, there's phone calls. Any questions you may have had, I'd be shocked if no one got the answers in a relatively short period of time. But that is, I think part of that is to help lessen the frustration. Again, maybe dispersing different city assets to different signage that businesses may have. I just believe that's important. The same thing with Main Street, whether it be the design, whatever design is chosen, we have to realize that to folks, it's coming. And it's going to affect everybody, at least everybody who drives or walks or rides their bikes. And again, I think my role, in part, is to help folks recognize that it is coming. When it's done, I think we'll be up to par with the rest of our city and the rest of our growth.
Thank you. Candidate Dara, same question.
Well, personally, I think the biggest challenge facing Cedar Falls at this point is a little bit different than infrastructure, but it's still somewhat related. I said earlier how Cedar Falls has developed in such a positive way because of past leadership, but I really think our steady growth and quality of life is a direct product of the invested and dedicated staff that we have working for the city. And as our staff grows older and we have new employees, their history with the city isn't quite the same. I've noticed that our longtime staff members often do work just out of their love for the community. And what I want to make sure we do is continue to instill that kind of culture with our new staff. And I really believe that their commitment and their dedication is what has made Cedar Falls great, and we need to continue to hire good staff, but then also when they're here, I feel our role as a council then is to set a clear vision for them, explain that vision, discuss it with them, make sure they're committed to it as well. And then when we've completed a project and our staff has worked terribly hard on some of the things that Jim has already talked about. We need to celebrate the work that our staff does. I think sometimes it's easy for us to forget who's doing the real heavy lifting in our community. So I would really like to see us focus more on making sure we have adequate staff, enough staff to do the job, and then provide a culture for them where they feel appreciated and really committed to the community.
Thank you. Candidate Runchi, what is the biggest challenge facing Cedar Falls, and what should your role be to help solve it?
By now, you've heard a lot of different challenges that the next council is going to face, and I'll throw another one out. I think one of our toughest challenges is to retain our young people through good jobs and affordable housing. And I think that's one of the problems we face is we don't have enough housing lots upon which to build. And it's a good problem to have. We're growing at about 1% a year, which is a really good rate of growth for us. But we really have to try and create more and better jobs to keep our young people here and then to provide housing for them. That's all.
Thank you. Candidate Cruz, same question.
Thank you. The biggest challenge facing Cedar Falls, I think, is to develop a strategic plan for the future, a plan that citizens have faith in, that they can embrace and participate in. The plan should continue on the strengths of the past and continue into the future. The plan should attract talented people from outside the community, entice them to bring their businesses and families to Cedar Falls. The plan would also encourage graduating students from UNI and the other colleges in our community to stay, to bring in fresh talent, modern, fresh ideas that will develop the business environment and the environment for all of Cedar Falls. To do this, we need to offer a safe and secure city with modern and well-trained police and fire personnel. I want to be able to also provide a diverse social environment for the enjoyment of the people, recreational development, things like that have been talked about, the kayak course, the bike trails. We need strong high schools, college environment, providing diverse cultural opportunities. All these things will make for a robust, thriving city, a city that will grow into the future. A growing city will have growing revenue to cover needed city services, street repair and replacement, expanded police and fire departments, subdivision growth, and in turn will have further growth. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next prepared question of the evening is, name your highest priority for Cedar Falls. We'll start with our candidates for mayor, Mayor Brown.
Thanks, Sadie.
Welcome.
Mine really dovetails more, again, towards the economic development. Very excited moving forward in the next couple of years. In that area specifically, and even more specifically than economic development, is what's happening with our technology, with CFU. 25 years ago, there was a decision made by various decision makers in the city to create what we now have in our industrial park. Really a shining jewel of an industrial park in not only Iowa, but in the Midwest. And now, as most of us know here, we're a gigabyte community in Cedar Falls. And all that means is that bandwidth, that door-to-door service we have for our internet is at world-class speed. And we've done a lot towards various spaces within the city, various small businesses that have been started, whether it's out of their home or whether it's out of a building, an existing structure. But now, moving into the near future, CFU is now testing 10 gigabyte service, again, door-to-door if need be. And that is really a game changer in relation not just to Cedar Falls or the Cedar Valley or the state or even the country, but worldwide. And all it really means is these companies have less downtime. These companies have these files that might take 2 days to download. Now it takes about 2 hours or 10 minutes. That is security, that's safety for these companies. And not that we want the next Google out in the industrial park. That's not it at all. But what we do have happening already, and I think can be compounded, is that various companies around the world are actually sending some of their folks to Cedar Falls just for the gigabyte service that they provide. You move that to 10 gigabyte, and I'm very excited to work alongside with staff, with other partners we have throughout the city of Cedar Valley, and really pull more and more of those resources in. So now, in the next 25 years, they'll be talking about decisions made now in terms of that industrial or that technology industrial park that we could enjoy into the future.
Thank you. Candidate Skane, what is your highest priority for Cedar Falls?
Well, I have several, but the one that is most important to me is to have government become more aware of its role in creating and providing community. See, Cedar Falls has beautiful, beautiful people. I mean, you can't find better people than the people of Cedar Falls. And they know what's going on. And the people who have been making decisions of late do not know what's going on. And as a result, they have attacked community on that level. Now, the community that I'm talking about is the kind of community that this city demonstrates when there's an emergency. Look at the flood response. Look at anything that happens. I mean, even on a personal level, I've had people I don't know who have asked if they could help me with a grocery cart. In other words, the people here want to help people. They're part of it, but the city government has not been a part of it and has provided some divisiveness that is not there. So what I look upon as the greatest challenge is to make government nearly as engaged in community as the people are.
Thank you. We'll move on to our at-large candidates. We'll start with candidate Green. Name your highest priority for Cedar Falls.
Thank you. My highest priority will be finding ways to give residents a greater voice in the decisions of the city. That's because one of the most common complaints I've heard from residents during my door knocking is that they are not being listened to, that city decisions sometimes appear to be made in a vacuum. I don't know how true this is, but as we used to say in the military, perception is reality. I'll attend neighborhood association meetings, as other council members have done, and we'll schedule predictable office hours in convenient public places around town to provide opportunities for residents to voice their concerns in person. Also, and I know this sounds corny, I'll wear a name tag at public events so that you can always know who at least one of your council reps are. I think all council members should do it, but I know that's a big ask. Most importantly, I'll do my best to observe firsthand how the city's operations impact the community. I'll continue using Met Transit's Route Number 9, and will continue riding along with the Cedar Falls Police Department. I'll also creatively seek other ways to get to know the city government on your behalf. I'd love to stop in for a cup of coffee at the firehouses if they'll have me. I'll do this because, as I learned during my time as a Coast Guard officer, you can't really know what's going on from behind a desk, or in this case, a dais. I believe that active and appropriately engaged council members are critical for ensuring that the government remains accountable to and responsive to the people that it's entrusted to serve.
Thank you. Candidate Saul, name your highest priority for Cedar Falls.
My highest priority for Cedar Falls is to make Cedar Falls the city of choice for new business, residents, and visitors. We have so many great assets to work with. Some have been mentioned before. And I believe that working together with city staff, developers, and entrepreneurs and residents is key to making our city the city of choice. When a business considers moving to the Midwest, we should shine. We should be on top of the pack. And I think with our technology and all of the utilities, UNI, our river, the downtown, all the things that we have, that is my highest priority. I'm excited to work with fellow councilpersons and city staff to provide the best services and amenities for our citizens. We need to make it easy to do business in Cedar Falls. And I bring that up as far as developers go and people that want to come here and help us grow the city. So I'm all about making it easy to do business here.
Thank you. Candidate Cornelius.
Thank you. Well, my priority should not come as a surprise given my last answer. I believe that our priorities should stem from our challenges. And my highest priority is fixing our fire department. Fully funding and staffing our fire department to national standards is crucial. We do not meet minimum national standards as set by national independent professional firefighting organizations for staffing or response times. In matters of public safety, adequate is not good enough. I'm worried about myself, I'm worried about my son, I'm worried about you and your kids. We need to address this issue to ensure the safety of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Now our ward candidates, we'll start with candidate Miller.
For my highest priority, I don't have just one. My thing is balance, and I've tried to display that throughout the decision-making process in the first 4 years in terms of quality of life, keeping our taxes low, and providing the best services that we can within the budget that we have. The whole goal is to find a balance there that works for as many of our citizens as possible throughout the whole community, whether it's new development, whether it's the work that's happening downtown. We continue to grow, and we still have to maintain a balance with each of these factors.
Thank you. Candidate Cruz, name your highest priority for Cedar Falls.
Well, the obvious is the top-notch fire and police that's been stated already. But underlying that, I think the people want to see a restored faith in city government, the decision-making process. As I door knock, people tell me they're frustrated. They don't understand how decisions are made. They seem to just pop up, and there's no debate. They don't listen. The city council doesn't listen to the concerns. I think as I relate to my 31 years as a financial planner, people are willing to pay for things if they understand what they're getting. If something might be perceived as expensive, but they're getting good value and feel safe and secure, they'll pay for that. So overall, the decisions that the city makes has to be in line with that, and that's kind of in a nutshell, restore the faith.
Thank you. Candidate Runchi, name your highest priority for Cedar Falls.
I agree with candidate Miller, or Mark Miller. There's a variety of things that are high priority. One of them, continued growth, keep our taxes down, provide a great quality of life through our parks and trails, and to provide the protection necessary by our police and fire to keep our citizens safe. Thank you.
Thank you. And candidate Dara, your response.
I too have multiple priorities, but for tonight's purpose, I'm encouraged by hearing so much emphasis on the importance of planning. And my personal priority is to continue to stay as current as I can with best practices in smart community development, recognizing that, yes, the decisions we make today affect us, everybody in this room today, but they also affect the next generation. And people have talked about what can we do to invite more people to our community, developing a community that more young people will come to. And I think that requires good planning based upon proven models. And so I think it's real important that we all stay ahead of that. And the other thing that I'd really want us to prioritize as a council is to stay engaged with the decision makers in Des Moines. I've learned that decisions that are made in Des Moines are often left to us to solve. And I think the more we get engaged with our local legislators and let them know the impact of their decisions on us locally, we'll be better served in the long run. And might even help at the state level as far as letting them recognize that their decisions do impact everyday people.
Great, thank you. All right, that concludes our prepared questions. Now we're ready to move on for the audience questions. So thank you everyone for taking some time to write down a question to ask. If you haven't yet done so, most of you have received a piece of paper. So go ahead, and if you'd like to ask the candidates a question tonight through myself, go ahead and write that question down. We'll have a volunteer collect it from you and bring it forward. So our first question that we're going to start off with, Cedar Falls has excellent resources with its higher education institutions. The institutions have ad hoc relationships with the city, the local government, and various entities, but the potential of these institutions as formal, forward-looking resources towards both engagement and solutions is highly underutilized. In what ways do you think the city can and should partner with and leverage the collective knowledge and resources that these institutions provide? It's a little bit of a lengthy question. I'll read it again at some point. We'll go ahead, just to remind everyone. We'll go ahead and start with candidate Miller. Your response.
I think it's our obligation. I mean, you look at you and I, and it's our job to look to them at every opportunity to try and foster a relationship and to make our community better, both for students as well as our residents. Colleges play an integral role in the development of the community, and I do know in some instances that we haven't had a great outcome in staff reaching out to the college. So I hope that that continues to grow as things move forward in the coming years, because they are integral in this community just as any other resident is.
Great, thank you. Let's see, we'll go with candidate Dara, your response.
I agree with Mark. I think there have, to no one's fault, I think there have been attempts made in the past, and two different institutions that function differently, but I do believe there are plenty of opportunities out there, and I'm very pleased that in his first year, Mayor Brown saw fit to have a student representative sit on the council, non-voting member, but that person represents 12,000 potential voters in our community, and to have them sitting here, I think, is symbolic, and I think a step in the right direction. And I know that the mayor and I'm guessing several other council members have sat in multiple meetings at different times with CEEE and some other departments at UNI where, the environment is, conservation is important to CEEE as it should be to our city, and I think it is a valuable resource. And so I think it's breaking down the barriers of our different institutions more than not a lack of desire to have something happen. So,
thank you. Candidate Runchi, in what ways do you think the city can and should partner with and leverage the collective knowledge and resources our higher education institutions provide?
I think President Nook is going to provide a new opportunity. I know Mayor Brown has worked with the president. I think we're always looking for opportunities to share, and UNI is a great partner, and we've done a lot in the past. I know Frank and I have been on long enough that we worked with them for energy conservation. We've done a number of different projects with them. So I'm not quite sure that we're not utilizing. I think we're doing what we can with them, and we certainly look for more opportunities.
Thank you. Candidate Cruz, same answer.
I think the university and the city should develop more internship type of programs where we have been doing it with council, but probably more involved with that. I had an opportunity through my lobbying work in Des Moines to work with the student government representative from UNI, and they were very effective in getting very involved in promoting Cedar Falls' wishes and concerns to the legislators in Des Moines, and I could see that being a good thing for the future.
Thank you. Candidate Cornelius, your response?
I have talked about talking to the experts. We have a whole university full of some of the world-class experts in their subjects, and we should definitely be talking to them when we come up with subjects, when we face subjects as a city council that they have expertise in. On the other side of that, we should be creating internships with the city to develop that next class of world-class leaders. We have the resources to help students develop skills, and we should definitely be doing that as a city.
Thank you. Candidate Saul, your response.
I would agree with all that has been said. Maybe invite them to our planning sessions, our strategic planning sessions for their input, engage in forums and speakers that they bring to the university, and even research projects. I think they are very valuable when it comes to doing research on different projects. One of the things that I've talked about quite a bit with our technology. I have some young nephews that are very into software design and all that sort of thing. It's like getting this is not with you and I, but getting our kids excited about the future of our technology and maybe mentoring them as well. So engaging the UNI students with even the junior high and high school kids would be a good thing.
Thank you. Candidate Green, in what ways do you think the city can and should partner with and leverage the collective knowledge and resources that our higher education institutions provide?
Well, I certainly agree with what was mentioned before about internships and practicums. And one of the things that I think we could spend more time on, more effort on, is having more available open data, which is a concept for having information from the government that's publicly available in formats that can then be reused and studied and researched. I don't think that the city does that very well, but we're moving in that direction. I run a group called Code for the Cedar Valley here in the area, and I use primarily UNI students taking data from city government. We just did Met Transit's website, rebuilt that, integrated it with real-time bus tracking. And one of the things that I think that the city could greatly do is encourage these ideas, and I've been thankful that Mayor Brown has been receptive to these discussions and helped us get our first project on board. I would just love to see that kind of transparency so that either university researchers or students can use that information.
Thank you. Candidate Skane, same question.
You have to get contact. I've heard tonight that the city council goes to the staff and goes to outside experts. I have not heard that they reach out to the university to see what the university could offer or even what the university needs from the city. We've not heard that. And that is what happens in every part of this council's behavior. They don't reach out. They don't reach out to the school board. I mean, people try to bring up issues that affect everybody that are promulgated by the school board, and they're told to sit down or go see the school board. Now, how can a city government representing the whole city be in a situation where they don't reach out to anybody but staff and outside experts? Doesn't make any sense.
Thank you. And Candidate Brown, in what ways do you think the city can and should partner with and leverage the collective knowledge and resources that our higher education institutions provide?
Thanks, Katie. I can mention a few things in terms of the engagement that we've had with folks from UNI. The NISG student sitting as a non-voting member, I think, was a big step representing those 12,000 students. I've been very encouraged by the entire process of when Vice President Wolpart was interim president of UNI and got to know him, and he had a common theme towards working with the city and engaging in various student activities to keep that brain flight from leaving once folks left UNI. Then President Nook came in, and that same exact consistent message had always been conveyed, and he would call me often and say, Jim, what can we do as far as working with the city and working in terms of helping that partnership? I directed City Administrator Ron Gaines consistently to get a hold of Vice President Hager, because there are things that happen down 23rd Street, College Street, all the surrounding streets as far as construction is concerned, things looking into the future depending upon potential road access, depending on the wetlands with the dry run creek. Staff is continually talking to Mr. Hager in terms of what the city can do for him there. Last week I was invited to a wonderful diversity and inclusion meeting with a wonderful lady from the Bronx talking about sustainability in terms of how you can work through different problems with the private and public dollars. It was a wonderful presentation, and I got free punch. And then there's consistent communications with UNI Police, the new county radio system. We were able to get together with President Nook, Vice President Hager, myself, Ron Gaines, City Director Jeff Olson, and Sheriff Thompson. And we had to sit down and we said, here's how we can work together on this radio system. So at UNI games, all of us except UNI Police are on the same radio wave except UNI Police. And it's a great conversation because in the future it could save taxpayer dollars. It can increase that safety we're all looking for. James Loebster at the Institution for Decision Making, wonderful asset to myself early on as I wanted to get all ready to go and call on companies around the world. He said, slow down, Mayor. We have plenty of opportunities to do that with a lot of good partners.
Great, thank you. All right, our next question from the audience. Are you in favor of changing the mayor's job to part-time? If you are you going to call for a referendum to change Cedar Falls to a council manager form of government? So we will begin this round with candidate Dara.
No.
All right. 1 minute, 59 seconds left. Okay. Our next candidate, candidate Runchi.
No, and that having been said, at some point down the road, I don't think it's bad to evaluate whether or not a full-time mayor is what the citizens want. Right now, I'm very happy with our mayor, and I think he's doing a great job.
All right. Candidate Cruz, your response.
I think I'm in favor of full-time mayor. The mayor position, if they're not doing a good job, they can be reelected every 2 years or a replacement elected. Where if you diminish the power of the mayor and rely more on city staff, they are in a position they can be there for 10, 20, 30 years, and you don't have the opportunity to necessarily replace them. So I prefer a full-time mayor and keep that strength there in the mayor position.
Thank you. Candidate Brown, your response.
I've stated publicly many a times I believe the position of mayor should be full-time, and it's not for self-preservation. Please understand, it's worked for 40 years under 3 fine mayors. And from day one, I've treated this position as full-time. Of course, that depends. If it's 40 hours a week minimum, I promise you I've been working full-time. If it's 40 or 50 or 70 hours a week during a flood, then maybe it's full-time. One thing I want to clarify is the salary that folks are bringing up. We have a full-time mayor and full-time city administrator. And the combined salary for those 2 positions together is roughly $250,000 a year. If you take the comparisons of roughly 10 cities very similar to Cedar Falls and their part-time mayor and full-time city administrator, it's still about $250,000 a year to pay for that. There is no savings to diminish the pay of the mayor or the city administrator. Now, what's unique about Cedar Falls is in all my research, I have not found a city that's structured like we are. We're special that way. In fact, we have the checks and balances in place that I believe has encouraged the success we've had as a city. We have more going on now in Cedar Falls, adjusted for inflation and everything else than ever before. So I do believe at this time, and at least into the well near future, it should be left alone.
Thank you. Candidate Skane, are you in favor of changing the mayor's job to part-time? If you are you going to call for a referendum to change Cedar Falls to a council manager form of government?
This is my issue. We don't have a mayor-council system anymore. In June 23rd, 2014, by a 7-0 vote, this council thought that they had created a city administrator. A funny thing happened on the process of creating a city administrator. They didn't do it right. According to Iowa Code 372, in order to change the form of government, and this suggests that what we do have in terms of reality today is a council manager ward form of government. And in that form of government, the mayor is a member of the council. And after they changed this, they thought, they reduced what the mayor did as a member of the council. He could veto bills. He could appoint people to boards and commissions. He could also veto, and he could preside at meetings. 3 things. Go to the website and you'll see. So it's not legal. The city administrator is not legal. We have been operating illegally. And do you know what? 4 council people can appoint a city administrator. 4 people can fire a city administrator.
Thank you. Candidate Saul, your response.
No.
All right, thank you for that short answer. Candidate Green, your response.
I'm in favor of the full-time mayor position, and it's not at all related to individual people, but just to the role of the position. And I agree with the comments earlier about how the position itself, I believe, is more accountable to the electorate because it is voted on every 2 years. With city administrator, I believe it would be much more difficult to remove an administrator. So I think that the accountability is a key aspect of it. And also, just to take a second on it and to, if you'll indulge me, just to know my thought processes a little bit, I looked back at the 2013 task force report, and I have real concerns about how that report was generated and the information in it. If you take a look at it yourself, it comes across really as like a white paper for why we should be down to full or part-time mayor status. It's basically like one side of an argument, and I really think that that report is invalid because of the implicit bias. It was written just by city staff, and I only found out about that in the last couple of days. That in itself, that implicit bias, makes me think that it doesn't make sense, like Mr. Runche said, to revisit the concept of it, but to do it with a much more diverse body. So representatives of the community, people from city government, potentially a council member as well, probably not the mayor. But that idea, that was actually funny. I try not to be. But the big thing being for the mayor position, I think that it does serve such a valuable purpose, and it's worth the investment that we're putting into it.
Thank you. Candidate Cornelius, your response?
I'm a little unclear as to what this discussion is really about. If it's about money, we need to explicitly have that discussion and talk about the compensation we're offering to the mayor. But before we rush into any decision about whether or not we're having a part-time, we should have a part-time or full-time mayor, we need to define our expectations of the mayor. No expectations are set out anywhere. How are we to judge whether or not we need a part-time or full-time mayor? Mayor Brown is at most major community events. And I really appreciate that. I think you do too, seeing the face of our city. So I don't think that we should be pursuing a part-time mayor.
Thank you. And Candidate Miller, your response?
Nope.
All right, the end. Our next question from the audience will be, occasionally Cedar Falls has controversial issues. An upcoming issue is the reconstruction of Main Street. There has been strong opposition to the recommended plan of bike lanes and roundabouts. Explain your philosophy of strongly opposed recommendations. For this round, we will start with Candidate Miller.
My philosophy and strongly opposed recommendations?
Yes.
Great question. This is something that I've struggled with in making decisions throughout my first term. And some of that has to be taken with a grain of salt. What is a strongly opposed recommendation? You can hear from people at every council meeting, and you're hearing from the same people, Does that mean that they represent 3/4 of a ward? Or it's a tricky conversation, because on almost every controversial issue that we've had, as long as I've been in office anyway, I've been told that I'm not listening to constituents, when I make every effort to respond to anybody that contacts me, whether they're in my ward or not. I will listen. I've been at every council meeting for 4 years in the hopes that I get to hear from people at the public forum. These things matter. We have to hear from constituents. That said, we vote on 50, 60 things a night that we don't hear from anybody on, which puts it back on our plate, and your trust that we're going to make a decision that is the best that we can make for our community. So, strongly opposed. I want to take anybody's arguments for or against, whether it's Main Street or University Avenue or a part-time mayor. I want to take that with concern, and I want to weigh everybody's opinions on those things. That said, we are entrusted as elected officials to, in the end, make a decision. And on Tuesday morning, I have to get up and be all right with the decision I made, in that I made the best decision that I can make for the community. So I struggle with it a little bit. I'm always open to hearing anybody's opinion on any topic in the community. But like I said, we've been told on every controversial issue that the majority is opposed to this, when we're not seeing those numbers in the communication from the public.
Thank you. Candidate Cornelius, same question.
I would agree with what Mark Miller says about, maybe it's the loudest voices we're hearing, and that's not really how the citizenry feels about it. I think as council people, it is not only our job to listen to constituents, it's our job to seek out those opinions. Not to put the burden of our job on the citizens, but to seek out that advice. We also need to listen to the experts, and maybe if there is a strongly opposed recommendation, we get a third-party opinion on those issues.
Thank you. Candidate Saul, your response?
Well, it does seem like the squeaky wheels get the grease. And I sometimes call most of our citizens the silent majority, because they're busy working, they're not necessarily involved. And I found that from door knocking, a lot of the people don't really pay attention to what's going on. So I do have empathy for the city council members as they sit here and have to vote on these issues. I think it's important to get all of the facts on a project like Main Street. I would ask, is it going to increase safety? Is it going to cost too much? Are we going to have to take people's property? What benefit is it for the city? Do we need bike lanes if we have State Street and Washington Street where they can ride their bikes? Do we put in a bike trail and cut down all the trees? There are a lot of considerations to make in these decisions. I agree with Aaron that as city council members, we need to seek out the opinions of others. But I believe our city has done, they put it in the paper, they put it in Currents, they have it on your Facebook, you can pull up the agenda, you can look at what is ahead of them. If we sincerely as citizens want to know what's going on, there are avenues to know what's going on. I do think that we can do a better job of explaining our votes, or the city council can do a better job of explaining the votes at the time. And I do appreciate Mayor Brown in asking for that input on each of those topics.
Thank you. Candidate Green, same question.
I feel like this is one of the toughest issues for a council member, and it's where I probably have the most empathy for what you have to do every council session, because you're entrusted to be a representative of the community, and you're entrusted to have the most information possible. So what happens when based on the data you have, it's perhaps diametrically opposed to what your constituents want? I think in some ways that if you've had the time to take that information and to parse it out, I think it's really up to the council members to take the effort to try to educate or try to explain why those decisions are going to be made. So it's no surprise at the council meeting. And you really have to have the integrity and the fortitude to be able to stand up for what you see based on the data, and to be willing to to accept the cost of that. I look at that from civil rights perspective. You know, it's certainly not that level at the city side, but to think of the folks who were representatives in the 60s and had to go against their constituents with the Civil Rights Act and legislation like that. And some of them were voted out of office, and they accepted that. So again, I don't think that we'll deal with issues at that level on city council, but I think it's critical to have that sense that, hey, I may have to go against my constituents. I'm willing to deal with that based on my view, but as much as possible, your goal is to represent the will of the people and just be willing to suffer the consequences if you can't. That's probably the toughest thing you guys have to deal with every time.
Thank you. Just a refresher of the question. Occasionally, Cedar Falls has controversial issues. An upcoming issue is the reconstruction of Main Street. There has been strong opposition to the recommended plan of bike lanes and roundabouts. Explain your philosophy of strongly opposed recommendations. Candidate Skane, your response.
Due diligence. This council does not do diligence. When the University Avenue decision was made, they decided on 4C. Why? Because both engineering had doctored the figures and said that 4C was the most inexpensive. It was the most inexpensive. It was $12.5 million higher than what the state had given the city to reconstruct University Avenue. Now, anybody, I mean, if we personally are buying a car, we don't just say, oh, what should we do? Well, you've quoted these prices. I guess I have to take the less expensive. Not the best car, not the best choice, nothing but the lowest price, which now has ballooned to 38 to 40 million. Now, the reason I start with that is because we're facing the same kind of sales pitch on Main Street. Now, we talk about roundabouts. Roundabouts is totally ill-equipped to have roundabouts. I mean, to have roundabout at 18th, you have to close the fire station. Okay? And then you won't have the space that you need because it's a two-lane two-lane highway. It's not a simple single highway. So, and they're not just the roundabouts, that they have a road diet then too. In other words, just reducing it to one lane with a turn lane. I mean, it's a design that boggles the mind.
Thank you. Candidate Brown, your response?
Thank you. When the question was first read, I took it as council opposing the recommendations. And I thought that was interesting because I've seen that happen where council is going against the recommendation of the city folks who are bringing it to the agenda. And one of the early things that I had heard from council and from various folks is that there's not enough dialogue up here during city council meetings. And after about 2 or 3 months, and I indicated to staff, or excuse me, to council, that there's going to be more pauses. There's going to be more, the discussion needs to take place, and they were in 100% agreement. And so I believe the meetings now that were taking place allow for those open conversations. In fact, in kind of a interesting way, one time after a council meeting, I told City Administrator Ron Gaines, I said, be careful, be ready for more 4-3 votes, 5-2 votes, 6-1 votes. I don't think there's going to see as many 7-0 because we'll open things up and have good conversation. We'll have good dialogue, and sometimes that slows the process down, but I do believe you still get an ultimate better decision collectively with the council as a whole. Main Street's a good example. We've had a number of discussions. It's been slowed down a couple times because council wanted more information instead of making that decision. They also have had, I know 2 open houses at the senior center to have the engineers there and ask questions. And it still needs to be decided, and there'll still be public hearings. As opposed to the citizen opposed recommendation, that clearly, I still think, kind of falls into place with the conversations we're having. and of course, probably with what myself and council has to balance in our roles here as mayor and city council.
Thank you. Candidate Cruz, your response.
I like to hear strong opinions from people because in general you don't have to hear, guess what they're thinking. You don't have to read between the lines, and from my standpoint, I think back to the years of being a financial planner and working on problems for clients. The more they can articulate an idea to me, the better I can provide a service back to them. We can make better decisions as a city council if we have strong opinions, because it really tells you what they're thinking, and you can rest assured that there's a lot of people who also feel that way but don't have the courage necessary to say that. They bring it forward. It also sheds light on unintended consequences of what is happening with a proposal that you may not have thought of until somebody brought the opinion forward very forcefully. So, thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Runchi, your response.
Mark Miller is absolutely right. Some of these are really tough issues. Really do struggle with them. One of the things that we're going to talk about Main Street. I think one of the things I'm going to be looking at very strongly is cost. And how can we build this road and rebuild it, make it a good, serviceable street for the least amount of money? Because we spend a lot of money on roads. Mr. Skeen is actually right about University Avenue. There was a cost overrun. There was a reason for that, and he never mentions that. But there was a cost overrun on that. And we have to really watch our money. We've got a lot of streets that need to be rebuilt.
Thank you. And Candidate Dara, your response, same question.
I appreciate Leanne's comment about we need to be better at communicating our decisions and how we make our decisions. University Avenue was a painful experience for all of us. And I really don't like hearing people say that we make decisions kind of off the cuff or without due consideration. University Avenue was 8 years in the making. 5 years of it was making a decision. But it was also investigating the best way to rebuild that road. And before we even built the road, the council passed a complete streets resolution. We also have a comprehensive plan and a comprehensive transportation plan, all supporting the elements of complete streets. And complete streets, just to keep it simple, doesn't have to be a roundabout necessarily, but it focuses on safety, efficiency, and access of all users. That's how cities are developing. That's how this city is developing. And just as something we don't communicate, I don't think very well, is at this point, our staff uses the Complete Streets Ordinance when they're looking at building a new street or rebuilding an old street. And all we do is ask them to look at those elements, if they're practical in that setting, if they don't displace somebody, and if they're not overly expensive, then those are the elements that we as a council want to see in our streets. Now, I say that we as a council doesn't agree on that 100% either, but it goes back to why I think it's so important to have plans in place and processes in place, because we use that process every time, and we're applying it now to Main Street, and we'll have those same discussions, we don't always build them that way if they don't answer those specific questions.
Thank you. Our next question from the audience tonight. The fire department currently has the highest number of trained firefighter personnel in Cedar Falls history, with trained full-time and trained public safety officers. Explain how you would handle comments regarding public safety. For this question, we'll start with candidate Runchi.
That's a really interesting question. We have firefighters. They're full-time firefighters. They're trained to fire the level of firefighter 1. We also have police officers, and they are trained. We have public safety officers who could be a policeman or could be a fireman. They are cross-trained. If they're a policeman and they're cross-trained to be a firefighter, they're trained to the level of firefighter 1, the exact same level as the full-time firefighters. I understand that the firefighters are unhappy with this arrangement, but it's the truth, and it really saves the city a great deal of money, because we have policemen who are out on patrol who are trained to the level of firefighter 1, and while they're on patrol, if they get a call for a fire, they can be the first one on the scene. And many of those fires are a car fire or something that can be handled without having to bring the entire department. So it makes perfect sense, in my opinion, and it's very cost effective. And there are a number of cities that have gone to this model that are much larger than we are.
Thank you. Candidate Cruz, your response, same question.
Could you repeat the question real quick?
Absolutely. The fire department currently has the highest number of trained firefighter personnel in Cedar Falls history, with trained full-time and trained public safety officers. Explain how you would handle comments regarding public safety.
I guess it depends on the comment brought forward, if they're in favor of the current program or they're not in favor of it. I'd like to find out what specific concerns they'd have, examples if there was a deficient effort in fighting a fire, what could have been done better, so I have a better understanding of where there might be a shortcoming, and if there needs to be better training, better communication between the different people on the fire call. I would dig into the details, because I couldn't really answer it without knowing more specific details. Because on the surface, John is explaining really well what's there, but people must feel that there's a shortage, and I'd like to know more specifics.
Thank you. Candidate Dara, same question.
Yeah, John did a nice job of explaining it. This is another example of something that perhaps the public is just now hearing, but our staff has been studying this for several years and have visited several communities that have used the PSO model very successfully. Our fire chief has talked about having more trained firefighters at fires than they've ever had before. I think the immediacy part is really important. We have police officers that are trained, and they have the facilities in their vehicles to get to a fire, to a site 2 or 3 minutes sooner than the fire truck gets there. So they can do some preliminary evaluation of the site, find out where the fire hydrants are in the neighborhood, find out where the entrance. I really believe that the fire that occurred out in the trailer park 6 months ago, it was the police officers, the PSOs that got there first, and I really think they were given credit for saving the lives of the people in that house, because by the time the firefighters got there, they had identified where the individuals were in the trailer. And so to me, it's like University Avenue. We've studied it, we've investigated, we're using data to make our decision, but change is hard. We're asking our community to change what we've known for a long time, and but you've got to trust that our fire chief and our public safety chairman would not put our community at risk. They firmly believe that this is as safe as the traditional method.
Thank you. Candidate Brown, same question.
Sure. So the PSOs have been mentioned, the public safety officers, where the police officers are trained as firefighters. And they are trained as firefighter ones. What I think is very important from that point forward is that they will continue to get the training other new firefighters would get if they are hired by the city, whether it's water rescue, hazardous material, tight quarters, medical, jaws of life. All those things come into play as their career progresses. They also should be, and typically have been, first on the scene. They have within 2 minutes of them being on the scene, you wouldn't know these PSOs or police officers because they would change in their firefighter gear. It's been mentioned the fire extinguisher on steroids that they have behind in their vehicles. Think of a deck fire. I know one was suppressed, or a vehicle on fire. Those folks there first with those fire suppressant materials that they have can help save property and potentially help save lives. And also they can assess the situation. And here's a crucial part. When the career firefighters show up at the incident, at that scene potentially you have the Director of Public Safety, you have Bobby, who's a career firefighter who does our code enforcement, and you have potentially the fire chief, battalion chief, captains of the fire department, and career firefighters. So now at that scene, instead of having 6 or 7 or 8 firefighters career, now we have showing up at these fires 12 to 14 firefighters. And the crucial part, again, is that these folks who have been around, these career folks that will be around for a long time, maybe 200 years combined experience, will still be dictating and still be letting folks know what to do, where to go, and how to mitigate the situation. And I know council's been considering it. It's been fully supported because they're finding that balance between having the safety of our citizens high on their list and the cost effectiveness of that. And I think it's a good idea, especially with the upcoming public safety building that we're also building south of town. Thanks.
Thank you. Candidate Skane, your response.
I need the question read again.
Sure. The fire department currently has the highest number of trained firefighter personnel in Cedar Falls history, with trained full-time and trained public safety officers. Explain how you would handle comments regarding public safety.
It's a false statement. It's a lie. I mean, I've heard 2 very carefully documented presentations at the last 2 council meetings that demonstrate that it's a lie. To say it's the highest number when we've gone from 38 to 27 professional firefighters, it's wrong. And it's that kind of lie that infects much of what the city does. They took lies, and they're about to take lies from Snyder on Main Street. There's no reason at all to have even in the consideration of roundabouts. They're dangerous. The traffic never stops. They're harmful to pedestrians. And so when we talk about this, it's another example where the city council has enabled the city to be served unsafe and unreliable.
Thank you. Candidate Miller, your response.
I disagree with Mr. Skane wholeheartedly on this. This is a tough one for me. I live in North Cedar. Our fire station is no longer staffed out there. It's tough. At the same time, I understand that, again, going back to finding a balance here with public safety, with a budget, with everything that goes into making public safety happen in our community, this model works. And I get that there's a lot of contempt amongst our firefighters. We've heard a lot of it. I've seen a lot of it on social media. And I guess, again, to Frank's point, change is hard. Going from a model that has been around for years and years and years to the potential for firefighters, you know, as Mr. Skane said, going from 37 to 28, I believe our ability with our public safety officers is making these situations better. We don't have the number of fires that we had 50 years ago. So I think it's our job as elected officials to look at every department in this city, and if there's a more effective way that we can use our employees while not losing the potential for everyone's safety in this community, I think we have to do that. And at the risk of becoming public enemy number 1, I guess my point, or my main question at this point is, what are our full-time firefighters doing to help this program along? Because I continue to hear how it doesn't work, how it doesn't work, how it doesn't work, but I don't hear any solutions. If our PSOs need more training, then let's get them more training. At the very basic level, as was discussed, they're trained to a fire level 1, the same thing that our full-time firefighters are. If that group needs more training, you know, you look across this country and there's volunteer firefighters all over this country that go in and effectively fight fires. Not that I think we need a volunteer firefighting organization here, but at the same time, how can they do that and how can we not? So I think you can sense my frustration there, but we need to find solutions to make this program work. Our council is fully behind it. Our public safety director is fully behind it. There's other communities across this country that are behind, that have made this program work. So let's get behind it and make it work.
Thank you. Candidate Saul, your response.
Well, I come from a fireman's family. My father-in-law was a fire marshal in Cedar Falls, and all of his brothers were firemen. I think it's a culture, and it is hard for them to change. I don't agree that we need 15 more full-time firefighters at a cost of $120,000 apiece, which comes to around $1.8 million. I think the PSO model works. There might be room for some middle ground here and some discussion. The training, that was one of the questions that I asked when I visited with the firefighters. They're concerned about the training. I said, why are you concerned about it? You're trained to level 1. Waterloo has an excellent training facility. If we need a training structure to go to, Waterloo has one. Let's go use it. However, I think there's middle ground here, and I think there's room for a compromise, and I think we should explore it as a city and as a council. I agree with staying with the PSO model, but I do think there's room, always room for discussion.
Thank you. Candidate Green, same question.
This is an issue I've probably spent the most amount of time on in my campaign, and having spent 10 years in both law enforcement and rescue and firefighting, I get where the firefighters are coming from, and I just can't come across to believe that PSOs are a one-to-one replacement for a career firefighter. But that's tough. I'd like to believe it's possible. When I hear the arguments about the amount of money that we're saving, that to me is probably the most telling. When that came out as the first sort of bullet point to me as a candidate from city staff, was we're saving a significant amount of money by going to the public safety officer program. And for me, just as a red flag, that's my biggest concern, is if it's based on how much money you're saving. Well, you could cut the fire department entirely and go to volunteer, and you'd save a heck of a lot more money. So I can't use that as my litmus test for whether this is a valuable or a valid program or not. I think it's important to note that the Firefighters Association, at least talking to me, has said that they're not opposed to the public safety officer program in itself. So I don't believe that they're digging in their heels saying that it can't work in general. Their concern is that one-for-one replacement aspect. And I back them on that, because I see the efficiency of having CAF units in the patrol cars and having a firefighting ensemble and being able to have somebody on scene, a first responder, take some immediate action. That's fantastic. But I don't think that it replaces, like I said, one-to-one. There's a lot of other aspects to this too, particularly thinking if you look in the news for police incidents that nationwide, in one night you can have a huge incident that didn't even exist that morning. I think that we need more training and specialization for police officers and firefighters rather than less.
Thank you. Candidate Cornelius, your response.
I agree completely with Mr. Green. I don't believe that PSOs replace firefighters, period. It's patently untrue that we have more full-time firefighters than we did previously. And Mr. Miller, you can disagree, but I refuse to believe that we live in a post-fact, post-truth world and that numbers don't matter anymore. So I believe that public safety officers and the public safety model is cross-training, and cross-training for the point of cross-training is great. But when cross-training becomes replacement training, that's when we have to worry. And Mr. Green also had a point that, you know, the PSO model does save us money. But what is the point of a city? one of the first things we rely on the city for is our public safety. So we cannot be using our budget and saving money to justify cutting services.
Thank you. All right, our next question from the audience is the most popular topic tonight among those in attendance about the environment and sustainability. So this question is 6 people's questions in one, so hopefully I do it justice. So some questions were regarding asking candidates how they plan to move away from fossil fuels, how they plan to create more sustainable and healthier forms of energy in our community, how they plan to encourage the reduction of greenhouse gases. The city of Dubuque has a stated community value of reducing greenhouse gases citywide by 50% by the year 2030. Several other cities in Iowa also have stated goals regarding sustainability. What sustainability actions and objectives should be part of the City of Cedar Falls goals? For this question, we'll start with candidate Skane.
As much that the nation can do, but what the city can do, probably encouraging the non-fossil fuel wind farms. I mean, our utilities have been very effective in this area. I mean, they created a solar panel system, and I've been participating in that, and that can be expanded. We have a number of areas where we can use non-fossil fuel, and even the process of using gas as opposed to coal is a start, because that's less dangerous. So the key to it is that think in terms of those resources that we do have and that the utilities have been implementing. I mean, they have a wind farm out in Worth County that reduces that kind of concern, but it's not going to end. We have to continue. Even on a personal level, we have to continue to find ways. And I was overjoyed when they decided to have that solar panel farm in Cedar Falls.
Thank you. Candidate Brown, your response?
Sure. You know, 2 crucial words there, the environment and then the sustainability of it all. I know that CFU, obviously a wonderful asset that we have in Cedar Falls, have maintained and upgraded their systems as a utility should, based on the requirements that are brought down by the federal government. I know that there's a lot of invites I get, and many times can attend with the CEEE there at UNI, and there's smart people there involved as far as sparking different conversations. I do appreciate how our city has looked at items such as recycling, with the facility that we have to get rid of garbage, and then of course, you know, do the recycling that we've done. I also am working close in tandem with at least the early conversations with Mayor Hart of Waterloo, as you probably read the newspaper, along with other communities in the Cedar Valley, to really sit down and look at the long-term effects of a wastewater treatment facility. As you know from the flood last year, one of the dangerous assets we had that could have really ruined our city for a period of time was to lose the wastewater facility if the water broke that levee. I remember asking Mr. Gaines, who's a civil engineer, by the way, a professional engineer, I said, what happens to the city if that gets breached into our wastewater treatment facility? And I think I remember him saying something to the effect that everybody south of 12th Street can't flush or run their water for about 2 or 3 months. So we've got to look at those things long-term and short-term. I do want, on a personal level, at least in terms of Cedar Falls, I'm not sure we're looking at an ordinance to do so, but I think if there's conversations about taking a look at the environment. Another question I asked Mr. Gaines early on when we were talking about the water quality dispersed into the city. This is another good thing that Cedar Falls has done. They measured the water when it comes into the city from the north, and when they measure it when it goes out of the city in the south. And that's, in the middle of that is the water, treated water dispersed into the river. A negligible measurement of water displacement there as far as quality is concerned. So we're doing well. We can continue to do so.
Thank you. Candidate Saul, your response.
I think the city's been doing a great job. They encourage recycling. The yard waste facility that we have on north side of town, they've done the one-sided garbage pickup, which some of you don't like. The stormwater runoff, any development, they have to put in storm retention basins, and that seems to be working well, except for this big rain we just had. I saw a lot of mud going down the new Green Hill extension. We're encouraging alternate modes of transportation. I don't think you can legislate 50% reduction in this by 2030. If we're going to develop and grow as a city, we have to be able to do some stuff. So I think we're doing what we can. I think there's always ways and new ideas in the future, but I would be very careful about writing a bunch of ordinances and restricting what people can do in our city.
Thank you. Candidate Cornelius, your response?
I believe that the solar farm out in Industrial Park that CFU has is a great thing. We should build on that. We should also look at wind farms to further leverage our natural resources for sustainable energy. Maybe we should look at promoting some kind of sustainable credits for home upgrades for solar panels or windmills. Also, I think recycling should be a city service. It's something that I don't even think about doing anymore. I do it. And so it's now a basic service. I disagree with candidate Saul's assertion that you can't legislate. Maybe you can't legislate personally, but the question was about the city reducing its greenhouse gas dependency. And I think you can definitely do things at a city level. Maybe legislating, like trying to create ordinances to tell people what to do in their own homes. That might be a little bit of a stretch, but we can definitely set an example and lead as a city.
Thank you. Candidate Green, your response?
There are a couple of items that I think are great that the city's already doing. Had a tour and was able to ride with a garbage truck over down in the Public Works facility, and it's impressive to see the measures they're taking for environmental stewardship there. Being able to keep the vehicles clean, basically in this giant hangar bay, certainly improves efficiency, gas use, and I'd like to see more efforts like that. I would like to encourage those. Also, I am, just to clarify, I am against, or so support one-sided trash pickup as a general concept. My concern with it is that I feel that it's inequitable, that you have one side of the street that receives greater service from another. So I'd be supportive of it if you split it so that perhaps 1 year it's one side of the street, odd years it's the other side of the street. Just as a way, I know it's a little bit confusing, but I think that's the only way I can justify it as a way to have equitable service for all. I just don't think it's fair otherwise. Also, I would like to see more opportunities within the city for teleconferencing. I'm on the Board of Rental Housing Appeals, and we sometimes have individuals phone in to do their votes, and I wonder if that might be something that could, in the future, could become a more common way to do city business so that people aren't having to necessarily drive to City Hall or come in from other areas. Another piece is the idea of electric vehicles, and certainly establishing within the fleet more purchase. I'm sure that's going to happen anyway. And last thing that I'm personally very in favor of is electric wheels for bicycles. I'm saving up for one for about $1,000. It's expensive, but I can change out the front wheel on my bike and have a little trigger and ride my bike to work without breaking a sweat. So maybe there's an opportunity within CFU to get a little rebate for that, if it helps out with not having parking, or maybe you and I could do that. But just looking at ideas like that and to try to encourage those sorts of alternate ways of getting around, and certainly taking the bus. Please do it if you can.
All right, and candidates that did not get a chance to respond to this question, I apologize. It's now time for our closing remarks. For the audience members who did not get a chance to have their question answered tonight, there were several good ones I didn't get a chance to ask, so I'm sure the candidates will be more than happy to stay after and to take any questions via email that you might have. So now it is time for closing statements. Each candidate will have approximately 2 minutes, and we'll start on the we'll start with our mayor, or our mayoral candidates. So Candidate Brown, go ahead.
Thank you, Katie, and again, thanks for League of Women Voters and for Channel 15 and for folks here in the audience. It really has been a pleasure, an honor to serve this great city. I've just done what I thought I could do when I ran 2 years ago, just in terms of communicating and letting folks know what I see happening and what's formally happening into the city. It's been amazing as folks have asked me what surprises I've seen, and really it's been involved with the different worlds that I wasn't involved with before. And I would say probably the number one world that was surprising and just wonderful to witness firsthand was the volunteer spirit that we have in our city. Just last night, walking down the street, passing out flyers, a gentleman older in nature, he said he had been in Northeast Iowa his whole career, and his whole life. I don't know what that meant, but he rambled off all the cities, and he always said, we always come back to Cedar Falls. It's what we have to offer as far as a city, the quality of life that we have, but more importantly, the people. I've seen that firsthand, and it's just wonderful. And my main goal, as I've said before, I always tell my girls, you can grow up and be anything you want to be, but you got to be here. I want to keep you here. And I think that is part of my motivation when we look at decisions that are made, but then also when we're talking with various folks who are very, very generous, not only of their time, but of their resources. And that really makes what Cedar Falls, makes Cedar Falls what it is. So I would just ask you again for your vote for the next 2 years, coming up November 7th, the election. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Candidate Skane, your closing remarks.
Election Day, November 7th, is an important date for those of us who live in Cedar Falls. It is an opportunity to determine who will be mayor and who will be on the council. This is an election that will determine how the problems facing Cedar Falls will be resolved. For years, I have been saying that the council, before the council that the people deserve better. The people of Cedar Falls are great people. They look out for one another. They have a great sense of community. When misfortune strikes, whether great or small, the people turn out to help. At the institutional level, that sense of community has been eroded. The university had programs cut and Price Lab torn down, and there was no great outcry from the institutions, including the city government. The school board asked the people to vote for a $118 million bond issue, and you weren't even permitted to talk about it at city council meetings. The city council changed the form of government to make the leader of Cedar Falls unelected, and there was no response by the other institutions. The Cedar Falls cable eliminated programs that presented diverse points of view, and the city council said it was none of their business. Community is what makes a city great. Community exists and is strong among the people. Community has been undermined as the people attempt to be involved with the governmental bodies. That is not right. As mayor, I will work with the people to restore the government bodies to be a meaningful part of the community. I will be an advocate for the people and for community.
Thank you. Candidate Cruz, your closing remarks.
I want to thank everybody for inviting us to speak and giving us the opportunity to show our views on topics. I want to say, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected to council, I promise that I will bring a fresh perspective from 31 years of working and listening with common folks across the country through my financial planning career. I understand the concerns of people and what they want to feel comfortable raising their families. and being able to retire and live comfortably into retirement. I have originally lived on the family farm, understand the rural lifestyle. I lived in college dorms. I've lived in an apartment. I lived in a single family rental, and now I own my home. So I can relate to all the different housing scenarios that we have in our community and the concerns people have regarding those. I have a passion for helping people, and I want to do the right thing. And I would appreciate your vote for Ward 3 City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Runge, your response.
It's been one of the high honors of my life to have served on the City Council. I have tried my very best to do the best I can for this great city. Thank you very much for tonight. Thank you for allowing me to serve.
Thank you. Candidate Dara, your closing statements.
Thanks again for all of you who sat here for 2 hours and stayed silent. That was kind of nice. Like John, I've been honored to serve the city, and I'm looking forward to continuing. I've learned a lot tonight. I wish more of our council meetings allowed us to have this kind of dialogue. There are good ideas out there, even though we don't always agree on them. I think we can come to consensus on things. I would ask the community to trust that sometimes when you don't think we're listening, we are, but we also have, as Mark said earlier, there's a balance that we're always trying to do. And whether you agree with us or not, I think everybody up here has the city's best interest at heart. And one of my pledges, and I've heard this consistently tonight in questions as well as from some of the candidates, I'm going to work real hard to be a better listener, but I'm also going to continue to push our council to take advantage of our goal-setting opportunities, and I guess my time's up. Anyway, I do want the city to continue to be very purposeful when we make decisions, and we do a good job of that. Goal-setting comes up in November, and I think that's a real great opportunity for the council. We'll have at least one new member on the council to take some of your input and move forward. So, thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Miller, your closing statements.
Much like those two gentlemen, this has been one of the most gratifying experiences that I've ever had in my life as a person and as a public servant. You know, I mentioned earlier that trying to get elected process was grueling, and sitting on the council here, you know, I stress the frustration of it, but it truly is gratifying. Seeing how the city has grown and seeing how it continues to grow. And I guess one of the things I want to stress is that doesn't happen in a bubble. We have public meetings, we take public input, we listen to staff, we listen to consultants, both past and present leaders. When you look at this community, it takes a group, and I ask everyone out there to be involved at every opportunity you can, because we are open to listening. If that's something I can echo from Frank, at least from my point of view, you're heard. When you speak up, we want to listen, we want to take your input, and we want to try and move this community forward in the best possible way we can. So again, I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to serving again.
Thank you. Candidate Cornelius, your final statements.
I want to be your next at-large city councilwoman, to be a balanced and effective advocate for all Cedar Falls neighborhoods and residents. I want to listen to you, the citizens, to experts, and to people affected by the decisions that are made on this council. I will make sure that I use the information obtained by listening to you to make decisions that are in the best interest of every neighborhood. I'm Erin Cornelius, and I'm running for the at-large city council position. I'm passionate about keeping Cedar Falls a thriving and fantastic community I fell in love with 17 years ago, and I believe we can do that together. For more information or to volunteer with my campaign, please visit www.erinforcedarfalls.com.
Thank you. Candidate Green, your closing statements.
Well, I just want to thank, or express my thanks to each of you that are here tonight, and to those of you watching at home, for your interest in local government, which honestly has more impact on our daily lives than what happens in Des Moines and Washington. For a healthy community, we need you to take a strong interest in Cedar Falls. Don't just take at face value what you read in the Courier, sorry, Mr. Kinney, or on social media or from your friends and coworkers. Investigate these issues for yourself and seek out diverse viewpoints. Now more than ever, we need to engage our neighbors who are have very different perspectives and opinions from our own, to learn from them, to appreciate their life experiences, and to graft all of our voices into the Cedar Falls story. That said, I'll close with a challenge and a plea to our previous, current, and future candidates. Once the campaign's over, I hope you'll continue in active service to the city rather than just retreating to public life. Our many city boards, neighborhood associations, and civic initiatives need your energy, perspective, and influence to be successful. As I've found through 2 decades of public service, winning an election doesn't make you a civic leader. Service does. You understand the city's issues better than most residents. Keep advocating for the changes you want and be a partner in the discussion of our city's future, and run again in the future. I'd love to see more challengers to the incumbents just for the sake of bringing in new perspectives into the discussion. For me, whatever happens in this election, I hope I've demonstrated my leadership ability, integrity, approachability, and genuine love for Cedar Falls, and I look forward to serving the community in whatever capacity you'll have me. Thank you.
Thank you. And candidate Saul, your closing statements.
Thanks again for hosting this event and listening to us tonight. I've been in business for 44 years and served on many boards as chair. 2 of my most prized accomplishments have been building the Pipac Center on the lake and leading the Holiday Hoopla team for downtown Cedar Falls for 8 years. Serving on the Cedar Falls Community Main Street has taught me a lot about our city, and I've learned so much about volunteerism and the love for our city of all of our citizens. It's just amazing. And I thoroughly enjoy being a part of that, and I look forward to using my business experience and my visionary leadership for the benefit and the progress and the growth of our great city. Thanks again for hosting. If you vote for me, you're voting for sensible services, strategic solutions, smart spending, 44 years of business experience, and visionary leadership. I ask for your support and for your vote on November 7th. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you everyone for watching at home tonight. Thank you candidates for joining us tonight and for being true servant leaders and having passion to run for such an important political office. We look forward to seeing you all on November 7th. In the meantime, feel free to reach out to any of the candidates if any of your questions here tonight weren't answered, or if you're at home wanting to hear more from our candidates as well. So thank you again to our sponsors, League of Women Voters and Channel 15. I wish everyone a great night.